mindsets in the dialogue, okay? Where everyone feels safe, prepared, comfortable, and in a position where they can do what they are there to do, right? Everyone has a reason to be in a certain place, okay? And we're gonna pull a little XY axis, and we're gonna talk a little bit about mindset. All right? And there's basically a couple different mindset dynamics that can contribute, right, to a particular conversation in a team environment. And we have a mindset that's about, oh, I can't spell it today. We have a mindset about minimizing, okay? So a minimizing mindset is gonna be a fixed mindset. It's gonna be a mindset that contracts. It's gonna be a mindset that has body language that is non-contributing, okay? That is feigning agreement to what is being said, right? That is easing in instead of saying what we think, right? That might change the subject if it's a difficult subject, right? They might not want to get at the subject, okay? They're the type of people, it's the type of mindset that would prompt an email, right? Or a text rather than speaking, okay? It's the type of person or the type of mindset that would lead to a person not sharing what they think for fear that what they think might be wrong. It's the type of mindset that would make someone say, I'm not gonna answer the question because I think the person answering the question has an answer in their mind and I don't know if my answer is the same, right? So that's the minimizing mindset, and that draws people out of the sweet spot. And it disengages that kind of constructive learning focused dialogue, right? Because in any of these meetings we have, in any of these conversations we have, the real objective is to understand what we can learn to get a particular outcome, right? That's the reason of any meeting or conversation that we're gonna have. On the adverse side is this kind of win mindset. Where do I fall, guys?
Win.
Yeah, right? And this is a mindset that says, here's what I think, and here's what it is, right? And here's the deal, guys. Like, I have classic ones, guys. You've heard me say these things, right? Here's the deal. If you have tendencies towards a minimizing mindset, when I say here's the deal, what do? If I am not saying the exact same thing as Mike, I'm not saying anything at all, and I'm certainly not gonna risk saying something, right? Because I could be wrong. Another one I say is, here's the reality, right? That's one I use a lot in 5+. Here's the reality, guys. Action does this or they don't do that, and we can't get these people to change, and right, here's the reality, right? There's no room for construction, right? There's no room for learning-based dialogue. I've given a really absolute position. Okay, so the key characteristics you'll see in this win mindset are like aggressive behavior, being very direct, right? Being very dominant, interrupting people, not listening, not asking questions, right? Being very dismissive. Yeah, okay, but let's get back to this other thing, John, right? Thanks, but let's get back to that, right? So these are all win mindsets things. And the irony here is that behaviors from both mindsets drive people with the opposite tendencies out of the sweet spot right away, right? So if you're in this minimizing mindset, you want to get rid of risk, you want to get rid of fear, you don't want to be perceived a certain way, you're going to create a vacuum for the win mindset to just fulfill, right? It just fills it. And vice versa, if someone like me comes in and is very dominant right away, I'm gonna create this opening for people who aren't dominant to go be safe, just by the way I'm acting. Okay? So these are the kind of two mindsets we're dealing with here. Okay, now what we're gonna talk about in the next 10 minutes is we're gonna talk about a couple tools that we can all use to help us all be aware of not driving people away from the sweet spot, and also tools we can use to help pull people into the sweet spot if where the discussion starts is that they're out of the sweet spot, right? So if we identify something, these are all tools we can use to start to pull people back in, right? Or to create that kind of inviting environment. The one agreement we have to all have to make this work is this. We all have to agree that every interaction we're going into is an interaction where the objective is to learn. Right, Edison? We want to learn what to do in the next week, right? We want to learn the things in that kind of manager-employee thing. We want to learn, if I'm the manager, I want to learn the things you need me to do better as a manager, right? If we're in that customer experience, we might want to learn how to steer a conversation back from where it's going. We might want to learn how to address behaviors we're seeing, right? Like if we have a customer who gets really dominant, how can we set them up to pull them back into the sweet spot where this type of learning-focused dialogue that's constructive happens, right? Because as soon as people are in either one of these mindsets, that's when the conversation becomes difficult, right? Whenever you have that polarization, the situation's difficult, okay? Because there's emotional stuff involved, there's personal stuff involved, there are all these influencers on all of our lives that are gonna, by default, drive us out of a sweet spot, okay? So, we're gonna agree first and foremost that I can't spell. We're gonna agree, this is a premise, we're gonna agree that we're in this learning mindset. Right? So the question becomes, now that we're there, right? How do we make that shift? How do we make the shift back into the center? Because that's where we want to be. This is where the balance can happen. This is where the harmony can live. So let's talk pretty quickly about the tools, okay? Okay, who's been in a meeting with me? Show of hands, everyone. Okay, who has been asked a very direct question by me in a meeting? Who has answered the question to the best of their ability? Who has heard the question repeated? The exact same question, word for word. More than once? Same question more than twice? Mark's still with me? 3 times? That's the point I'm trying to make. So here's the thing, guys. What Mark has helped me understand, and I'm really appreciative of it, is that there's something I'm really good at, which is deploying a sequence of questions to understand in 1 sentence or 2 sentences what matters most. Okay? That's a skill I have. Now, what I've also realized is my approach and the manner with which I do that scares the living shit out of 75 to 90% of the people on the planet. Right? And it is so heavy on this side that I disengage people from contributing to the conversation. And I know this because I watched Mark react like this for the first couple years of our partnership. Okay? But as a tool, this is a very valuable tool in this exercise of getting to the center. And the manner with which we're going to deploy it is not the way I deploy it. The manner with which we're going to deploy it is we're going to identify a position, not in one word, in one sentence. And it's gonna start like this. So Eric, can you give me an identified position on Ireland as a travel destination?
I think it's a great place.
There you go. I mean, that's as simple as it is, guys, right? Right? I think we should be auditing more units. I think we should be closing out jobs faster. I just think that. That's all it is. Not is, you guys need to do a better job, you're lazy, right? How that's delivered the first time, and then the next steps are what's so critical with how we deliver the definition of the statement I just made, like how it's heard. I said that statement about units the exact one way, and they very well could have heard it the second way, right? And this is the awareness that this opportunity creates. So the first step we do is we ID this position. I think. So when we have an I think statement, you know, in science this is called a hypothesis. In English it's called a theory, or in logic it's called a theory, right? That's all this is. It's a hypothesis or it's a theory. It's something we think, okay? The second critical step is to do this. Share the logic. Share the thinking behind the position, right? So this is where, for you guys who loves spreadsheets and stuff, this is where data comes in, right? Because these are data point 1, 2, 3, 4. What could they be? Our to list sucks, right? Like that could be data, right? We have no conversions. Or Eddie, what could it be? Gable can't punch out a job on time, right? They're not sending the right paperwork. So this is where you get to share everything that contributes to this, right? That's kind of where you get to share everything that contributes to this, all right? And then what you've done is you have talked about something that's very consumable and understandable. I think it's a great place to go to. Can we just keep working this, Eric? Because you're good at this.
Yeah.
Why?
The people are great. Lots of good beer.
Great people, good beer.
Easy
I'm not sure
around.
you need more than that, right? Right? But great people, good beer, easy to walk around, and you could keep going. I saw the pictures on Instagram, right? You can keep going, right? So now we've shared the logic, and this is where. So for me, a lot of the times, guys, where do I stop? I stop at 1. That's usually where I stop. Most of the time, I might not even give you guys the courtesy of the logic behind what I think. Okay. So then, if we can start incorporating the logic, guess what? We all get to understand how we're thinking and what's important that's driven by what? Our very unique personal experience with the subject matter. Dan, is your personal experience going to be different than mine?
You bet.
Yeah, almost 100% of the time, right? Because we each have different responsibilities to each other. That's the thing, right? Like if you drew a responsibility list for this company and you put people in circles, we all have to do different things in order for the whole to work effectively, right? So now we've understood perspective. We've understood situation, okay? So now what's the next step? The next step we come to is over here. And what we're going to do next, what do you do with a theory or a hypothesis? We want to test it. We want to test it. Okay? We want to test the hypothesis. So we want to say, And the logical way to test stuff is this. If then. If the beer is really good, right? It's kind of that conversation, you know? And what we do in the test is we get a chance to look back at the data and do what? Validate or verify, exactly. We get to look at it and we get to say, hey, you know, does this make sense? Sarani, was your experience with Angela what Mark's experience was with Angela? And this is a real live example, guys. Mark Sarani and I did this morning. We did exactly this morning. And what we found out is Sarani had different expectations out of the IT consultant than Mark did and than I did. I already knew Mark and I had different expectations. But I didn't know that you had a third set, and I didn't know what that set was. And because we found out what that set was, what happened? We were able to add a different level of depth to how we wanted to manage that vendor going forward. That was valuable information, right? In the past, I know in that situation, I don't know, I would assume in that situation that if we had just said, this is what we think, and this is why, there's a good chance you would have said, okay, great, this is what my bosses want me to do. So I'm gonna do what they wanna do, right? And we got a small tweak because we were able to harness a position and some logic that we hadn't incorporated, Mark and I hadn't incorporated. We hadn't thought about it, right? And the way we harnessed that was we went after this kind of genuine inquiry. Now, I have a habit that is really, really challenging for a lot of people in my life. For all of you, and for, honestly, everyone else too, which is, it's either the manner with which I ask questions, or it is because I know the answer. Most people think I'm asking questions I know answers to. It's a stylistic habit I've developed, just like I asked what I write above that arrow as I was already starting to write it. It's a habit I've developed to trigger participation from people as I talk in a room much like this, right? It's a behavioral habit, and that's all it is. And for me, it's really about shifting to genuine inquiry, right? And really understanding, well, Eric, you said the beer was good. Tell me more, right? So tell me more, guys, is a type of question that's used a lot in sales called an open-ended question, right? These are big ones for me. I love these open-ended questions. Is the beer good?
Yes.
That's closed-ended. I can't learn anything else about that than the fact that you think the beer is good. But you said the beer was really good. Tell me about that.
Mm-hmm.
Why was it good? Was it cold? Was it cask conditioned? Was it undercarbonated? Was it malty? Was it hoppy? Was the ABV right? I mean, I'm up to 8. Like, there's so many things I can learn about what good is for you, right? And not only that, I can learn what you think is good, but I can learn about all this beer in Ireland too, which I don't know anything about.
This feels like a very detailed feel felt found, like as a sales technique, and it feels like a version of that, but in a different capacity that you would use a lot of colleagues rather than trying to win a sale. Does that make sense?
I don't know what feel felt found is.
So like, in feel felt found is like someone gives you an objection, you say like, I understand how you feel, other people have felt that way as well because of X, Y, and Z reasons, and they found if they do this, then that, and then you can ask open-ended questions more about how they feel. Does that make sense? Wasn't the best
Yeah, no, it absolutely, no, I get it. It's about acknowledgement. Say it again.
Feel felt found? Like, for like EF, it was like pretty easy. Like, the customer would be like, oh, very worried about terrorism with sending kids abroad. So like many other customers have felt that way about sending their kids abroad, but they've found that because of all the safety measures we have in place, they are able to feel comfortable with having their kids, go on the trips because of the security person that is on the trip.
Yeah.
Things like that. So they're able to continue the conversation, but still address concerns, and then ask questions based upon their being genuinely concerned about what their issues are.
Yeah, it's really fascinating to me, Chrissy, because I'm a salesperson like you are, right? And there's not a lot of us in this room right now, okay? I'm always fascinated at the broad applicability of sales techniques and sales strategies to everything we do, right? Because there's a lot of, you guys, ABC, right, for salespeople, ABC, always be closing, you're always on, you're always selling. Every interaction you ever have in your life is a sale, right? That's a lot of the traditional kind of Tin Man sales dogma, right? Movie reference? No? Tin Man? No? Okay. Tin Man?
Is that the one with
It's the aluminum siding, guys?
Yeah. No,
okay.
All
right.
That scene when they're in the, is it Alex Baldwin? No, that's the other one.
No, that's
Glengarry
Glengarry
Glen Ross.
Yeah. Which is also really good. I think the thing here, what I heard from Chrissy, guys, which is really interesting, because it ties directly in, she said feel, felt, found. I heard acknowledge, confirm, right? I hear your concern. And people have that concern, like you're not insane, right? You're not insane to be afraid of this. Like you're normal, it's normal, right? And then here's some examples of how it was handled. And then you can make the choice as to how to do it. So like these things here tie into what's happening here in such an intimate way. It really is a great bring up. I didn't know where you're going with the feel, felt, found, but like
it really
that ability to kind of take an acknowledgement, right? Take an acknowledgement here. Oh, okay, I hear what you're saying, Joe. Like I understand that you're nervous about going back and trying to figure out how many people live in apartments for this client because of the situation you're in. I get it, right? Like I get it. Okay, cool, I get that. So what do you think happens if we do? Instead of saying, hey Joe, tough fucking shit. They want the boxes filled out, get them filled out. What does that do? It does absolutely nothing to help you achieve the goal of the business. And like we were talking the other day, right? I don't know what's going on with that customer. So for me to take that dominating position about do this, do this, do this, if I don't bring a level of genuine inquiry to that, it kind of eclipses the whole opportunity for us to get any information from the subject matter expert. Because Joe's the subject matter expert on that account, not me. Like my job is to, right, hear this, a clearly ID'd position, the thought and logic behind what he's saying, test it with some if-thens, and to test it in a collaborative manner. Joe, what happens if we don't go back to him? Let's run that forward at ABCD, right? Like what happens if we push on this one? And I don't know the answers to those either. I mean, you could see from that email thread. Victoria's like, Mike, we've been doing it this way forever. And I'm like, really? Yeah, it's news to me. But that inquiry got us the spreadsheet on what the rent roll is, which is a document I think we don't see all the time. So maybe they have been doing it like that forever, and we just haven't had optics on it. So maybe what comes out of this is we have a better opportunity to set better expectations with clients going forward. That doesn't solve what we do in this situation, right? These two, right? I know what your position is on that, right? I believe if we go back to the client, again, they're gonna lose confidence in the program and we might lose the whole portfolio. That's your position. Share the logic behind it. You've done that with me too. What are we talking about again?
Northern Star.
Northern Star. Right? You've shared the logic. I've gone back 4 times. I was told we needed this. I went back for this. I brought it back in. It was wrong. I'm not giving the right information, Mike. And they're losing, I feel, it's intuitive, I feel like they're losing confidence, right? I mean, so that's an easy example here. And it's like, okay, let's test it out. If we do this, what could happen? If we do that, what could happen? And then we can this is where the strategies start coming up, and then we can start looking at the genuine inquiry. Tell me more. If we do this and then that happens, how do we think this goes down? How do we think it spider webs out? How do we think it plays out? Right? And it's interesting, guys, because this stuff is applicable, in my opinion, everywhere. This stuff is applicable everywhere. This is applicable with my wife, right? This is applicable with Brian, right? Like this is just so applicable everywhere. It's not even just about work. And that's the thing that's so amazing about so many of these things, is that these personal, professional lines that I have historically drawn in my head, I don't know how much they even actually really exist.
I feel like it's like in its basics, it's just learning empathy and remembering empathy exists. Because like you can't be empathetic to each other, you're never going to get to that sweet spot. So like if you look at all these things, it's like you need to have empathy, you need to understand the other person, and you can't do that without the why. And that's how I'm understanding it.
Yeah, so you read this?
No. Nope. This is the first time ever hearing
So the word that's used, right, is very close to empathy in its humility.
Yeah.
Right? So it's really close. And there's these kind of 4 key things. If you're living on this as kind of this rough vertical, right, and you kind of have these quadrants drawn out, we're going to take it right over here to finding the balance in these discussions. And there's 4 characteristics that we have to have, and we have to really, really put them in place to ensure that these things happen, right? And they tie directly to these. I'm just going to write them over there because of space. But to identify a position very clearly, we have to have candor. Right? We have to be able to just simply say it. Not sugarcoat it, right? Not hide it, right? Not suggest it, but to simply say it. And invert on the other side of that, as we say it, right, we have to say it in a manner that has real humility, right? We have to be empathetic. We have to be compassionate with the statement. The statement needs to be about what we perceive facts to be, not how we perceive people to be. Right? Facts versus people is the real tight one. Right? To share the logic, you have to be really, really brave. You have to have courage. Right? Because the logic is letting someone into your brain. And that, guys, as of today, is the only space that's sacred. When those cell phones you all carry around, and me too, are now linked into your brain with some little chip, then the brain's sacredness is gone. So be careful of that, because your generation, not mine, your generation is at risk of that. My generation will never have the chip put in.
No, we're good.
Yeah, you're with me, Joe. We're not gonna let it happen. But some of you younger guys and gals in your 20s and stuff, you may wake up in 20 years and say, man, I really want that chip. I don't wanna have to hold the phone anymore. I just want the phone to integrate with my brain.
Does courage allow you to make a mistake as well, or do people should be afraid of making a mistake? Because that to me falls on the number 2 over there, where you're very direct to people, but I feel that you direct because you're eager to deliver knowledge, not to test them. So having courage, it's okay, because I have courage to tell what I think, and I'm not allowed to have people in my brain, because I'm eager to learn as well. So
Yeah.
courage.
So when you look at this, Roberto, and you look at this kind of minimizing mindset, you know, and I'll flip back and I'll read you a couple of the notes about it, okay? Okay, submissive, feigning agreement, easing in, changing the subjects, avoiding confrontation, right? Covering things up, asking leading questions, withdrawing from an engagement, right? Like physically, mentally, emotionally. Those are the things that courage is gonna help overcome. Okay, and that's why it's kind of on this minimizing side, right? If we look over here, this is the min, this is the win,
Mhm.
right? That's why it shows up kind of over there. And just keep in mind, guys, once you're below this learning mindset line, these things don't live exclusively with the numbers or exclusively in these quadrants. I just wrote numbers to help define them. They tend to match up nicely, but you can use logic to overcome winning for sure, right? To bring someone back from winning, you can use logic. Right, so this can go up here and that, right, like, it really is about 4 tools. I just put numbers on them. But having courage as a characteristic is certainly gonna help minimizing mindset people get closer back into the sweet spot. The other place it's gonna help is it's gonna help winning mindset people do what? Get humiliating and say, hey guys, I know this is how I am. I've learned this is how I am. I've learned that I might be limiting the return on investment that we're making, you guys. I might be limiting your ability to grow and stretch your own boundaries simply by the way I conduct myself in conversations and meetings. Is it true or not? We can go through this process and do it, right? I'm at the I think thing. But that takes, I'd argue that takes courage too, Roberto, right? Like owning a shortcoming, apologizing for things, taking responsibility for things. Those are all things that people with win mindset do very frequently because it's empowering, right? So they feel anytime they get more empowered, they have a better shot of winning. It's like this little spin up there that goes on. Okay, and the last one, guys, and we'll wrap up after this, is in order to test, right? Right? In order to test and go after the general inquiry, you have to have genuine curiosity. You have to really want to know. Like, you have to genuinely want to know what it's like. Right? Okay. And the last thing I'll add to this, and then I'll say we should spin around and chit chat about this for a couple minutes, is this, right? So much of life is about the individual versus the individual's ego. So for a long time, when I thought about ego, I thought about this, but that's because where my mindset is, guys, right? So like I would think about winning. I would think about, oh, I'm too proud, or oh, I'm too modest, or oh, I'm fearless. And I would hear people say that's because of your ego, that's why you're fearless. Or I'd hear people say, oh, you know, you're not as good as you think, that's just your ego. I would suggest that ego is not a one-sided thing. It's not thinking you're better than you are. I would suggest there's a dimension of ego as well that is thinking you are lesser than you are too. And I would think that perhaps we should talk about expanding the definition of ego and how it impacts all of us. You know? And the commitment I'm gonna make to you guys now, and this is on behalf of Mark and I, is we're gonna be very, very aware and very, very intentional about ensuring that we are changing the manner with which we engage conversational capacity. So we can work towards making a shift. We can work towards growing to a situation where all contribution that is meaningful is made. And that's the commitment I can make to you guys. Here's what I do know, it's not like turning the lights on and off, right? We're gonna do it, we're gonna craft it, we're gonna practice it. It's like any practice you guys do. It's like any mental or mindful discipline you participate in. It's like any health or nutritional discipline that you participate in. It's like any musical instrument you play, right? These are disciplines and these are crafts, and we have to hone them. And we have to be constantly vigilant, because the argument is between ourselves and our ego as to how hard we're actually gonna try and whether or not it's actually worth it. Okay? So, we're gonna look at this in a bunch of different ways. Okay? So, I would just ask you guys, be prepared and think about this. Take some photos of it. You know, let's get this up on the team channel and thread. Okay, Mark's taking a video of this. Let's get that up on the team channel and thread as well. Okay.